I believe this will be the last video of the series. But I don't want to make a big deal out of it.
This is episode
13.
Welcome to A Shock in the Dark.
Sorry about all that. That may have been a little too much. Yesterday I was thinking about posting these recordings, and I just started making an intro for this video, and I just couldn't stop myself. Nice doggy. Oh boy, yeah, it's kind of loud out here. I just couldn't stop adding more and more and more dramatic stuff to it. It was like a compulsion. I thought it would be funny. In fact, I think it is funny. So there. I apologize for the noise. I'm trying to walk over to a place that's more quiet right now. Not only did I never set up my good microphone, but I'm also on the streets of Hollywood right now because I don't feel great about being home. Explanations will follow. Today is Wednesday, June 23rd, and it's 5:36 p.m. And this is 100% going to be the longest post I've ever made. So just kick back and enjoy my pain. The big news is the medium comes tonight. In fact, in just a few hours, about 2.5 hours from now. And I'm way more excited about it than I ever thought I would be. In my mind, it's the scene out of that Exorcist movie when the priest is arriving. It's a foggy night. The taxi pulls up and a shadowy man carrying a bag slowly approaches the house. Except in my case, it's going to be a smoggy night when the Uber misses the turn and the sweaty woman carrying a bale of sage shows up at the apartment. It's not quite as cinematic as the Oscar-winning movie, but hey, it's my own personal horror movie. It's all I've got. In all seriousness, though, I really do have hope. And not just hope. I actually expect tonight to be the culmination of, my little private scary movie I've got going on. And I actually see this as possibly the beginning of a new, much nicer, even positive chapter in my life. I feel like, and I'm not going to cry when I say this, so give me a second. I feel like for the first time in a very long time, I can see beyond all the bad stuff. I really can't see an end. And I feel like there is hope. And I am not crying, and you can't prove it anyway. So, is it over? Is it fixed? Or is this going to be like when I held a rock and read a scroll and nothing at all happened? That experience left me feeling like I did when I was a kid and the box of cereal didn't have a prize in it. Or when you light a firecracker and it turns out to be a dud. But, obviously with much larger consequences. At this moment, I don't know if it's over and fixed, but by the end of this post, you will know. You will know everything. So, let's get to it. Tonight, the medium is scheduled to arrive at 8 p.m. and apparently the thing that has invaded my apartment, whatever it is very well aware of that because it's basically been throwing a temper tantrum. Since some point late last night, all sorts of things have been taking place from, things that are just annoying to stuff that's pretty dangerous. From just the last 24 hours alone, just in one day, a few examples of what's been going on. Well, I woke up this morning to what can only be described as the stench of death in my apartment. And it's strong, it's pungent, and just vulgar. It's a powerful smell. Similar, I guess, to what a dead animal smells like, but way stronger. And I'm assuming it's not the smell of a dead animal that I breathed in for the first half of the day. It's sickening, literally. But I'm proud to say I managed to make it through the smell without vomiting. And then, about 1 o'clock this afternoon, the smell changed. The smell changed to flowers. And you may be thinking, well, that's a nice smell, but, and this is going to be really hard to explain. You'll either get it or you won't, but it's a very specific flower smell. It's a funeral flower smell. I can't tell you the difference in regular flowers and funeral flowers smell, but I'm just guessing it has something to do with the kinds of styrofoam they use and wreaths, or the types of flowers used, the chemicals used to preserve them. I don't know, but whatever it is, all day I've had some very bad memories forced into my head every moment. Smell is one of the most powerful senses when it comes to memory. And frankly, it's been fairly difficult with this thing dredging up some specific memories of mine. But you have to give it credit for being creative. It's pretty genius to make somebody feel so bad and so uncomfortable with something pleasant. I cannot say that this thing is stupid, whatever it is. And, I've been cleaning the apartment today and otherwise getting ready for tonight. So after doing a bunch of straightening and cleaning, I got out of the shower only to notice these 3 deep scratches across my chest. Okay, fair enough, that happens. But that didn't even bum me out a fraction of what happened when I walked into the living room and saw that everything was back to exactly the way it was before I started cleaning this morning. I mean, I swear every piece of trash, every morsel of dirt in the carpet, every grain of dust on a shelf was put back exactly to where it was. I did all of that work and it's gone. Now that is a genius of psychological torture at work. And maybe that'd be enough to break me, but I have support troops coming in tonight to carpet bomb that clown back to wherever it came from. Oh yeah, 2 more things worth mentioning. there was what I'm assuming was dog excrement in my refrigerator, which seems a little juvenile for something that's supposedly so old. You know? It's like I got the Bart Simpson of demons or something. But then when I took out the garbage, this is when the serious thing happened. I took out the garbage. I got pushed really hard from the back when I was at the top of the stairs, and luckily, because of my cat-like reflexes or something, maybe just dumb luck, I did not fall down the stairs and break my neck. I hurt my ankle a little bit, but yeah, I think it was just short of, a sprain. But it's fine. Oh, sorry, one other weird thing from last night. So, I woke up sometime last night. I have no idea what time it was, but okay, try to understand this. And trust me, if somebody said this to me, I would never believe it in a million years. I understand that. It's going to sound like the biggest pile of garbage you've ever heard. I get it, but it happened and I'm going to say it anyway. I saw something in my mind's eye. I know that sounds crazy, hippie-ish, I don't know what, but I saw something in my mind's eye, not my physical eyes. I didn't see a physical thing, but, and it's hard to explain. It's different than imagining something. It's something you're sure of without actually seeing it physically. But anyway, I saw in my mind's eye, standing in the shadows at my bedroom door, this creature, being that was part human, part animal. Like, okay, goat hooves, then ankles up, it was a man, but it had this oversized, ugly, mean, snarling face, and these giant curly horns on the side of its head, like a mountain goat or a ram or something. Is that the same thing? I have no idea. But that's what it was. I don't know what creature that is, but it looked like some kind of horrible version of a creature you'd see in a children's book or something. Maybe, I don't know. I tried Googling it a little bit. I didn't run across it, but it looked like some sort of mythical creature. But I got under my impenetrable protective shield, also known as my blankie, and I ended up being able to go back to sleep. And then it was in my dreams. Luckily, it was not the giant scary thing I had seen in my doorway. In my dream, it was like, it was a puppet, like a cartoonish puppet version of itself, and I wasn't scared of it at all. That was nice. Oh, and I do have some audio to play for you. Although nothing visual happened on my security cameras last night, this is the audio recording from the living room, where it sounds like something is happening while I sleep, but I absolutely have no idea what is going on. I mean, it's obvious something's happening, but who knows? Here we go. The audio from my living room from last night while I was asleep. There you have it, audio from my living room last night. Nobody was up, nobody was doing anything, but obviously something was happening. So yeah, there's been things popping off for the last 24 hours, and I'm sure I'm forgetting some stuff. In fact, as I started listening back to some of my previous recordings, to help me decide if I really wanted to put all this on YouTube or not, it made me want to clarify a couple of things, maybe answer a couple of questions that I feel like come to mind, add a couple of pieces of information, But here's the information I thought was important to include. Number one, why have I lived in the same apartment for 10 years but only started having problems a few months ago? I believe I have the answer to that, and before this video is done, I will tell you exactly what my theory is. In fact, what my theory is for this whole thing. There's a couple of things I want to confirm with the medium tonight first. The second thing is, I sound like I'm doing pretty good during most of these recordings. So I think the question will come up, was it really that bad? Or was it just annoying? Or my answer to that is, I try to have a positive outlook on life even when things are bad. I always figured that if you're going to experience something bad, you can either have a good attitude about it or a bad attitude, but either way, you're still going to have to go through that bad thing. So the only thing you can control is how you react to it. So it may have sounded okay, but the big, life-changing, day-to-day horrible things, have been pretty unbearable at times. The worst things for me, personally, to deal with have been, living in constant fear. That's not fun. I think we all know by now that, living for long periods in fear can lead to psychological issues down the road, PTSD, for example. And you may think that nothing I experienced was that scary, but I guarantee you, when it's bedtime and the lights are off and you're hearing noises and you do not know what's going to happen next, that's extremely frightening. It is very unnerving. That leads me to another thing, which is sleep deprivation. Sleep deprivation affects everything you do, every minute of your life. You can't concentrate. It's easier to wreck your car. You can't function at work. It affects you mentally and physically. You can't think straight, but you also can't seem to really get anything physical done, like, taking a shower. That suddenly becomes this momentous undertaking. So, yeah, that's bad. And there are a lot of other things I never got around to mentioning in my recordings because they were always overshadowed by much larger things. Or, to be fair, I may have forgot to mention them. Possibly because of sleep deprivation. But, my things would constantly vanish from where I left them, only to show up in some odd place later. Sometimes way after I needed that item, like my car keys would disappear right before I would leave the house to go do something important. And I would end up having to take an Uber somewhere. And then when I got home, as soon as I opened the door, I would immediately see my keys sitting in the middle of the couch. I mean, the first thing that you see when you walk in the door. My phone went missing all the time, and I would have to log on to the I Lost My Android website to make it ring and track down where it was. One time it was in the soap dish of the shower. It was on top of a really tall shelf in the living room one time. It was in the oven one time. There were hours and hours where about every 20 to 30 seconds there would be the sound of 3 big knocks, like somebody was pounding on the wall or the door, and that would just go on and on and on, and then it would stop for like a minute, and you'd be like, oh God, thank God, and then it would start again. I started having multiple episodes of exploding head syndrome every night when I slept. If you don't know, exploding head syndrome is where you wake up to a very loud sound, often an explosion, but as real as it seems, the sound is only in your head. I never got the actual explosion, but I was startled out of bed with everything from screaming to the sound of somebody throwing a giant stack of books down by my head, gunshots, really loud whispers right in my ear, the police banging on the door, boom, boom, open up, it's the police. I mean, you hear that sound and it startles you out of bed and it's not real. One night it was the sound of somebody being stabbed to death. I mean, a burglar commanding me to put your hands where I can see them. If you can name it, if it's a horrible sound to wake up to, it happened. The craziest thing to me, though, that I have not mentioned before is after my landlord changed the locks on my apartment, I had one set of keys and he had one set of keys. So there's only two sets of keys, right? I left my house, I drove up to the valley, I came home later that night, I went to unlock my apartment door, but I didn't have my keys. I thought I must have locked them in the car, but, I couldn't see them in the ignition, they weren't visible anywhere, so I called the landlord. He eventually got me into my apartment. As soon as he opened my door, there were my keys sitting on the desk. Not only could I have not driven my car without my keys, I also can't lock my apartment door from the outside without my keys. So, how are my keys inside the locked apartment? I don't know. Certainly you can see how this makes you start questioning your own sanity. Just let me tell you a very quick, short story that'll help put all this into perspective, okay? A few years ago, I was at my apartment. I was in a good mood because I had just received a package of my favorite tube socks, and I just put on those brand new tube socks, those glorious socks, when all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I see this formless white thing floating over to my left-hand side. I turned my head real quick so I could, catch it, but it was gone. It was faster than me. A few minutes later, I'm looking at something on my computer, and out of the corner of my eye, I see this white thing floating there. And out of the corner of my eye again. But this time, I was smart about it. This time, I don't just turn my head real quickly. I just sit there. I sit there and pretend to be looking at my computer, but actually, I'm watching this thing float around in my peripheral vision. And it took me probably about an hour of doing this to realize I had a white piece of tube socks fluff stuck to my eyelash. I could have easily convinced myself that this was something paranormal. And, aside from when I was a kid, I've never been one to think that that kind of stuff is real. I've always just figured that, I had an active imagination as a kid. Well, until recently, anyway. So, what I'm saying is, all this stuff starts to wear on you after a while. And I've really tried to remain positive, but make no mistake about it, this has been one of the most difficult times of my life. And I'm not looking for pity. In fact, I would say I've been extremely lucky in my life. I just want you to understand how this kind of thing wears down a person on every level of their life. It just constantly grinds you down until you really have nothing left. So, here's where everything stands at this point. I spoke to the medium last night, and I did ask her if it would be okay if I recorded her ceremony, the cleansing, and honestly, she didn't sound very happy about that. However, she basically agreed to let me record the audio, just a small portion, as long as I'm 1,000% focused, not distracted by recording. So I agreed to that. In fact, I said, look, it'll be easy. I'll just use the audio from my security cameras. I'll play a maximum back of 30 seconds. I volunteered this just so people could have a taste, a vibe of what's happening. And she seems cool with that. I am not quite sure what the problem is with recording the whole thing. Maybe it's trade secrets? I don't know. But this is her thing. She's the expert. And I'm just eternally grateful that she's helping me. So as far as I'm concerned, what she says goes. She's the boss. So the next time you hear me speak, it will either be later tonight or tomorrow morning, depending on what happens tonight. So fingers crossed. And let me just say one more time. Even though you're in the future and I'm in the past, I do appreciate you being here with me. I don't know who you are, but it feels like I do, and it feels like I have somebody to talk to about this stuff. So, okay, you're ready to time warp into another dimension or whatever. All right, so here comes either tonight or tomorrow morning. And I'm back. See? Time flies when you're having fun. It's just after noon Pacific time, and let's get to it. It all started about 8 p.m. last night. I heard 3 distinct knocks. And this time somebody was actually at the door. It was the psychic medium and her assistant. I didn't know she had an assistant, but she does. Just to give you a bit of a visual, the medium is an attractive, well put together woman. Striking features, very strong countenance. She's also really tall, about 6 feet plus a few inches, slim, muscular, and she's wearing this floral pattern dress that in my mind says I'm a little bit of a hippie, but she's also wearing a sweet pair of oxblood Doc Martens, which gives her this don't mess with me punk vibe. She seems friendly and likable, but also a pretty serious person. Her assistant is a slightly disheveled, like Jim from The Office, kind of disheveled guy. Clean cut, about 22 years old. He dressed like a cross between one of those guys in Reservoir Dogs and maybe somebody on the Best Buy Geek Squad. Black pants, white shirt, skinny black tie. He looked kind of nervous. If I was a betting man, I would say he's probably new at this, but has also seen enough to know that he should be nervous about what might happen next. Things had really started picking up around the apartment, as I had mentioned to you before, throughout the entire day yesterday, but of course, suddenly, everything got quiet when they arrived. And I started getting nervous, thinking they would think, this is a crazy person, nothing's happening here. I mean, they come in and everything seems way normal. I was actually kind of hoping that something big would happen at that point so they could see. Yeah, see, I told you something's happening here, but The medium sat down on the couch with me, and we talked for a bit as the assistant was, unpacking a whole bunch of stuff from this case, a whole bunch of various supplies in it. I had a lot of questions for the medium, and also, some questions just out of curiosity, some important questions, but I'll share anything important from that conversation with you. And by the way, I'll also share with you what I believe to be the full story of what happened after I finished telling you about last night. So we had just started talking for a bit, and I started to tell her my theory on what was happening, but she immediately shut that down. She said she didn't want to know anything about my thoughts or ideas on what was happening. I'm guessing because she thought it might, taint whatever she picks up through her medium skills. But at the end of that conversation, here's what she said was her diagnosis and remedy and prognosis. So her diagnosis was that somebody had brought an entity into my apartment and attached it to me. Attached it to me, not the apartment. She said the entity is apparently doing all this stuff to me, not because it necessarily wants to, but because it is bound to doing it. In other words, someone else is controlling it. If not actively, then at least, they unleashed it upon me with clear instructions of what to do. The remedy, she said, would be a full cleanse of me and my apartment, plus a little bit of a education on how to maintain things in the days ahead after everything's all cleaned out. The medium is, as I found out in this conversation, is a Canadian Indigenous person, I think is the correct term, or First Nation, however you want to say it. She mentioned that she is, hold on, I wrote it down. I may be pronouncing this wrong. I may have written it down wrong too. I apologize. Lakota? I'm not sure what that is. I'm just telling you what she told me. A couple of other notes I wrote down so I remember. She said she uses an approach called overwhelming exertion, which she said is basically using her own education on spiritual matters, from that she received growing up, from her family, but also all the research that she's done. Apparently she's done a lot of in-depth research on all areas of all religions and spirituality and the occult. And when she tackles a problem, she tends to use every appropriate method that's been proven to work for that situation. She also said, I guess it's like the spiritual equivalent of shock and awe. She also said she would be conducting some spiritual healing and cleansing on me before she cleansed the apartment, and then she would seal the whole thing against anything negative and then teach me how to, keep it safe. And finally, her prognosis, she confidently said she would absolutely be able to take care of the problem without question. I mean, the way she said it left me with no doubt she knew what she was doing. And then it was on with the cleansing. And I have to say, I don't know anything about cleansing or spirits. I'm sure you figured that out by now. The only things that I know is whatever I've seen on TV shows or movies. And obviously those things are over-dramatized with winds blowing and houses shaking and demons flying through the air. Spoiler alert, none of that happened. Here's what I can tell you about my experience. And I really apologize for this. I'm sure there are people that hate me for not knowing what I'm talking about. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I don't know more about this stuff. I could really give you some insight into what she did. I apologize for not being a more spiritual person and knowing about this stuff, but I will tell you what I can. The cleansing of me and the apartment involved a ton of stuff, and it took a long time, hours. My best guess is that it took maybe 5 hours. That's a long time. It all started with my cleansing, which, again, I was told needed to happen before my apartment was cleansed. And that used, I don't know if this is the exact order either, honestly. But I know some of the things that were used. One was a bundle of burning leaves, which I would have assumed was sage, but it smelled like maybe a combination of sage and tobacco leaves, and had a slight tinge of incense to it. I don't know what that is, and I apologize. She also drank something that I believe to be alcoholic. I don't know if that's part of the ceremony, or maybe she just had a long day. I have no idea. And I should mention, she covered all parts of me with the smoke of the burning leaf bundle, and used a giant feather to direct the smoke on different parts of me. She also used a knife that she went around my entire body. And this is based on nothing at all, but I just assumed at the time that either symbolically or really or whatever, that she was cutting away the attachment, maybe. And there was also this giant rock. Look, I'm sure it was some kind of crystal, but it was this big pole wand stick made out of crystal, and that was waved all around me as well. Honestly, and oddly enough, that whole ceremony, that whole cleansing of me is a little bit of a blur. It's like she talked through the whole thing, and I don't remember anything specific that was said during that whole time. Not a word that she specifically said. By the way, she did later on explain to me why everybody should not be using sage. There's this environmental stuff to it where it's bad for the environment, but also, I can't remember if she said her grandfather or great-grandfather was killed for using sage, and it's disrespectful to him and other people who have suffered using sage as part of their spiritual ceremonies. This is another topic that I'm completely ignorant on, but I will educate myself on this. I had no idea that anyone had ever been killed for using sage. And really, no idea that everybody that's using it is killing it off. Anyway, there was a more explanation to it. She said something about how they properly cultivate it by taking the leaves or whatever, and and then thanking maybe the plant or something for the leaves. But a lot of the people that dig this stuff up are taking the roots and just killing off the whole thing. So the only other things I can tell you about the cleansing is she had a black candle in a bowl of water. It could have been water or salt water, I can't remember. That burned all the way down to the water line until the water put out the candle. She did use salt in a couple of different ways. She used some kind of oil on me too. I forgot to mention that. She also used an oil on the doors and the windows. She used incense. She also, this is something I've never seen before, she broke a mirror, which I thought you weren't supposed to do, and put that in a box with this tiny doll that looked like it was made from sackcloth, like a potato sack, and maybe some corn husks or something. It looked like what I assume a real voodoo doll would look like. What else do I remember? She drew circles. We buried some things, including the doll and the candle, which the candle that was in the bowl. We broke that and then buried that and then poured the water from the bowl on top of that. I don't know what any of this stuff is. There was a lot of stuff, and I wish I knew more about it so I could give you some proper details, but I really only know what I've seen in movies. So, yeah, no screams from beyond the grave or earthquakes. In fact, for me it was fairly dramatic for somebody who's never seen anything like it before, up close, or experienced it themselves. But otherwise, really it was pretty low-key. Now, here's what did happen, though. As she was winding up the ceiling of the apartment, I blinked, and suddenly, it was like, all of a sudden I felt like everything was crystal clear. Like I instantly went from watching an old television to a high-def 4K TV. And I also felt physically lighter. Like I jumped a little bit. I actually jumped a little bit because I felt like, God, I feel like I lost 40 pounds. And I've seen this on TV shows before, where somebody says, oh, the room felt lighter. But it actually did. The entire apartment lost its dreary, dark vibe. And there was like an ease about the apartment and the vibe of it. Could all this be a placebo effect? Absolutely. And I'm keenly aware of that. And granted, I slept all night last night and half the day today, but that in itself is a miracle. So if that's the placebo effect, that's okay with me. The story, I'm not going to remember it completely correctly, but I think it was World War II. There was a medic, and I feel like his name was something Bleacher. Anyway, this medic was treating soldiers that had been injured when he ran out of morphine. And then he had the idea where he started giving the soldiers a saline solution, which does absolutely nothing. But he told the soldiers they were getting morphine. And those soldiers were relieved of their pain. And that is the placebo effect, and that's where it comes from. And for a long time, people have thought this is a psychological thing, right? But the latest study showed that placebos can cause real biological changes. Not only that, but I read a study a couple of years ago where, and the results of the study were, even when people knew they were taking a placebo, they were helped by the placebo effect. All this leads me to this. If you take a placebo and it works, is it a placebo? If this ceremony works, do I really care why it works? It works. But I don't want to make that proclamation by, what's happened in the last day and a half while I've mostly been asleep. The real test to me is what's happening 3 weeks from now. And that will be the third part of this video. Before we get there, and before we find out all the answers to everything, I just have a couple other comments I wanted to throw in here. Well, I do have the audio I want to play for you from the cleansing last night. In fact, I'll just go ahead and do that now. Here's just a few moments of audio recorded on my living room security camera of a very, very, very small part of the cleansing process. This is just so you can kind of mentally picture what was happening. Just a tiny bit of audio from last night. Here we go.
Of the light, we fill this home from roof to foundation. Every crack, every nook, our intention is unbending. Our intention is unbreakable. Go now from this place and find your peace. Go now from this place and find your peace. Go now from this place and find eternal peace.
That's just a little taste of what was happening over here last night at my apartment. Before we get to the final portion of this report and the answer to the question, did this really work? A couple of other quick notes. Before the cleansing, I was telling the medium about seeing a creature in my mind's eye and then dreaming about it being a little puppet. She said, when I saw the creature in my mind's eye, I was actually seeing it. In other words, it was really there. She said most people have this ability to see things in their mind's eye, but they blow it off as just being part of their imagination, even though it feels like it's something other than their imagination. Since they didn't physically see it, they just deny it. So I asked if that meant I was a sensitive, and she said, I am as sensitive as a rock. So, nope, not a sensitive. She did say, however, I have a strong empathic intuition, which means what I've kind of really felt my whole life. I feel what other people feel. You know, if you're happy, I feel that happiness. If you're in pain, I feel that pain. And as far as the dream goes with that creature, looking like a puppet, she said that's good. She said you're beginning to see that this is a puppet of somebody else, that, you know, somebody else sent this here. That entity is not actually the real enemy. It's the person who sent it. And while it's done a really good job of torturing you, you know, it's not an organic thing that is menacing you because it wants to. It's doing this because, you know, it has to. It's been commanded to. She said, fortunately, that actually makes it easier to defeat. And finally, before we get to the big question, big answer, the last order of business. Here is what I believe happened. This is my theory on the entire experience of throughout all these recordings. I have to stress, for legal reasons, and because it's true, this is only my opinion. Everything I say in this part of the recording is alleged, and it's only my personal opinion. I'm just guessing, and seriously, I could very well be completely wrong about this, but here's what I believe. I believe that my neighbor is responsible for all this. I got the feeling that she actually likes me. But for some reason, which is not at all clear, she wants me gone. So, since, in my opinion, she practices black magic, she, in my opinion, placed a curse or a spell or, conjured something to torment me one way or another until I moved away. I don't know if there's a reason she didn't want me near or if she didn't want me in this apartment, but the goal, to me, it's clear, it was to get me away from here. That's what I strongly believe, but I have no way to prove it, and again, I could be wrong. So, it is finally time for you to time travel to 3 weeks ahead to find out, did this really work? Well, let's find out now as we beam ourselves into the future. Today is Wednesday, July 14th, 2021. My plan was to wait exactly 3 weeks to determine if the problem was really fixed or temporarily fixed. And that was difficult to wait that long to make this recording. I'll tell you the answer right now. I can say with extremely high confidence, it is fixed. It is over. Last week, the medium who performed the cleansing on me in my apartment called in to check in with me, and I asked her again, could I please reveal her identity, but she asked me not to, so I won't. But I owe her so much. What an amazing person she is. And I asked her about making referrals to anybody who might need her, and I was sad to learn that apparently she's retiring from her work because of health issues, and she's moving back to the area where she grew up to be closer to family. And I sincerely wish her a lot of happiness as she does that, because I'm forever grateful to her and what she's done for me. I could never repay her for the peace that she brought into my life. And I know I'm not the only person she ever helped, so in my opinion, yeah, she deserves some of that peace herself, for sure. The other huge news is, 3 days after the cleansing, my neighbor and her cat moved out of the apartment. Apparently, she wasn't very comfortable living in that apartment anymore. I just can't imagine what in the world could make her uncomfortable to live in that apartment. I certainly hope it wasn't anything I did. But yeah, I walked out of my apartment on Friday, Saturday morning, right after the, cleansing took place. Saturday, Sunday morning? Anyway. And the landlord was in her empty apartment painting it. And in that very moment, I knew my problems with this thing were over. And I wanted to record right then, but I'd made a commitment to myself to wait 3 weeks, give it that trial period, make sure I was all good, so I finally get to do that today. This also means that I'll now start, posting my videos onto YouTube. I didn't want to post anything until I was positive there was a conclusion to the story, and now there is. My goal is to post these videos starting sometime around the first week of August, probably, maybe a little bit earlier, a little bit later, but I'm guessing you already know this since you're hearing this, so I don't know why I'm telling you. I'm open to the idea of podcasting, but for now, I'm happy just to stick these things up on YouTube. They say that you learn from your mistakes, and in my life on this planet, I've made more than my fair of really dumb mistakes. So I've learned a whole bunch of stuff. Stuff that I wish I knew when I was younger. Like how to deal with stress. I finally learned that the way to deal with stress is to not let it even enter your body. If it isn't part of you, it can't take hold and grow and overwhelm you. It's hard to explain. It's a personal thing, but I've learned for myself how to deal with stress. I've also learned to do this. Every time something bad happens in my life, I try to get something good from it. And usually it's something that I learn from the experience. So I started asking myself, what do I get out of this experience? Well, for one thing, I think I'm going to see if I can narrate other people's true stories on YouTube. I've become such a huge fan of a few people who do that, throughout this experience. There are people that do such a great job with it, like Hellfreezer, Slumber Reads, Let's Read, Mortis Media, The Creepy Fox. These people all have silly names, but genuinely seem to be pretty great people. And I would be honored to be considered a contemporary amongst them if I could make it that far. And I may not. I may do it for a couple of months and decide, this is not for me. But if I give up after a couple of months, there was never a chance I could do it anyway. I know this kind of thing takes a long time. I know it takes a long time to reach 100 subscribers. I'm going to be patient with that. In fact, I'm not even focused on that. Instead, I'll just do the best I can. And hopefully, entertain a few people and maybe help a few people. Even if the help I give them is just letting them know that they're not alone, that's good enough for me. The other thing I got out of this experience is the lesson. And yeah, I did learn that, maybe if you've had an experience that sounds insane, Bigfoot showed up in a UFO and kidnapped you. Okay, maybe it did. How do I know? I wasn't there. But really, to me, the lesson I get from my own story is this. I am rubber. You are glue. Well, kind of. What I mean to say is, I believed it before, and now I know it for a fact. You will reap what you sow. If you do bad things to other people, and if that is where your mind is, if that's where your heart is, then I am absolutely certain that bad things are going to come right back at you. Bigger and badder. And if you treat other people with kindness and you look for ways to help other people, even if you disagree with those people, you treat them with respect and you actually try to put yourself in their shoes and understand why they feel or think the way they do, then a whole bunch of good stuff is going to come your way. And it's going to come back, many times over. Call it karma or creative visualization or religion or being spiritual or whatever label you want to put on it. But at the end of the day, it's your thoughts and your actions that will determine your future and, maybe more importantly, define you as a person. The only question is, who do you want to be? So, I guess that's the end of this story. I hope this continues with your story. So, until I get enough emails of fascinating true stories, I sincerely wish you, listening to this right now, the best of everything. So, thank you for listening. I do sincerely appreciate it. And until we meet again, good night, whoever you are.
You've been listening to A Shock in the Dark, an audio journal of a haunting. For a free subscription to this series, push the subscribe button. To get an alert when the next episode posts, push the bell notification symbol. Until next time, as our narrator says, good night, whoever you are.